My mind kept thinking about exactly where do you switch from gathering to releasing and releasing to gathering?
I mean, there's not actually an exact physical
Maybe
outside
that's-
position in a sense. It's when you change from gathering to releasing, when you basically internally and your body completes the gathering motion. You see, it may not be, my hands may not have to get to a particular spot, but it's like once I stop gathering internally into my center, then everything changes and goes the other way.
So
Same
coming
thing
up
here.
here isn't continuing gathering, it's
No,
releasing.
it's releasing. And so then when I reach however much I can release through out to the periphery, that's when all the stuff in my joints change also, when you start going back in. So the end points, and there are kind of physical positions too, one's here, one's here. But whether your hands are here makes a little difference. It's out here a little bit, it's maybe not quite as good because of some other connections. But the thing is to really try to time everything to open at once and finish opening at the same time, and then getting everything to close at the same time. That's really the big thing.
Timmy, is there a value to using the breath in order to just kind of validate this point and this point, or sort of to combine those two points?
Yeah.
So the exhalation, when the exhalation finishes, you're maybe everything's drawn in.
Unless you want to go slower.
Yeah, if you're timing the movements with your breath, which is fine to do if you want to. This point here should be the point of change of the breath, and this point here should be the point of change of the breath. And that's true whether you're doing natural breathing or reverse breathing or whatever, however you're breathing it, but those points should be the change points with your breath as well.
I still feel a lot of localized muscle tension in my shoulders when I reach apex. Is that just...
Then don't bring your arms up as high.
Okay.
Try to use less physical strength, use more of the strength of your body and the opening of your body. So even if it's like here, if your hands only get up like to the height of your temples, that's fine. The tendency at first is I think you have to really do this big lift. You actually really don't want to do that because it will put too much tension on your shoulder. Okay? Now the other thing that is kind of playing in getting the energy to go deeper, which is a little more subtle thing also, is how tissue is twisting. And as the tissue twists in your body, it helps everything become looser and unbind, and it allows the chi to go a little bit deeper. So it's not just the gathering and expanding of all the joints, and the gathering and expanding into the center that deepens the chi flow. It's also how your tissue actually twists around your skeletal structure. And the looser this becomes, this in terms of, as a side to this, in terms of doing Tai Chi, the looser your tissue gets, the more you can do things like stand there and have a really good aligned skeletal structure and move all the tissue around the skeletal structure without moving the skeletal structure. Which is what makes it very hard to get power on somebody who has that developed, because you go to do something and they seem very solid and they're very integrated, but at the same time, when you try to get a hold of anything, it just kind of rolls off, because the tissue is very, very loose around the structure. And so, because what happens with most people is if I go and do this exercise, and let's say I turn my shoulder joint, my bones tend to turn around. But you can also do it where
Turn up big muscles.
the big muscles slide a little bit as you do it. So they kind of start doing kind of this around the bones. And I want to work on that a little bit, have you work on that. So if someone wants to come up here and be the guinea pig, all right, we've got to find one. bad
Test
word.
subject.
Test subject. Test subject.
That's better, yeah.
That sounds too clinical, though.
Well, forget it
Lab
then.
specimen. It's a
Yeah.
lab specimen.
Come up here, Sean. So I just want to make sure you're in the camera.
Okay.
Shoot this, okay? What I want you to do is I want to have you go ahead. Wave to yourself. You'll start out. Don't want to go to your head. Go ahead and go into doing the second exercise. Now, if you watch as Sterling does it here, see how the shoulder naturally kind of goes back as it gathers, it closes. Well, at the same time, it also can rotate. And so all I'm trying to do is just coax the soft tissue. And that's probably how Bill does this also. Better to do it symmetrically. To get it to loosen around your bones. And this will help, actually really help the chi really get in a lot deeper. Now you notice we're not like doing this. We're not going, yeah. Well, no, it would hurt, but it also won't allow your tissue to, and everything to really release and relax, which is what you're trying to get at. You're trying to get it to soften, and through the softening and relaxing. And so the amount that you actually kind of do this to kind of help stimulate it is, it's like a light touch, and it's a very light rotation. It's not a heavy, like I'm trying to twist the heck out of his arm, because that won't work very well. So go ahead and do this again. Now, what we're going to do is, so this goes out, in. Okay, now as this goes in, as this goes out, this is going to go in slightly.
Which is going in?
The forearm is going actually the opposite of the.
Okay, that's complicated.
See, this form is kind of falling apart, but that's okay. Because what you're trying to do is get this kind of looseness and rotation so that your tissue starts really releasing deeper through your body. Okay? So probably do this in groups of 3 because it helps to kind of do it symmetrically at the same time.
This is a quality in Tai Chi that's called sung, where you're really in this looseness of the muscle around the skeleton. It's called sung, and we talk about it all throughout Tai Chi. And this is a great place to find.
Is there also the word for relax and sink?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's the word that's translated as relax, which is actually not a very accurate translation. But there's not a good English equivalent. So it's kind of something like relax. It's kind of something like release it, sink it, loosen it, something like that. But there's not a good English, really a good English equivalent. Which I find very interesting because it is describing this kind of physiological state in your muscles and stuff like that. But there's not a good English equivalent. I don't know what that means. You have a bad language. Okay, go ahead and start. Hey, everybody, just for a minute here. Start just doing the upper arm. Okay, just do the upper arm. And as you close, the tissue wraps in lightly. And as you open, the tissue wraps out lightly.
So just the upper arm first?
Yeah. Because coordinating the two becomes difficult at first. The hand positions now, as you do it. If you notice as you're doing this and your arms are getting kind of twisted around, a lot of times your hands would end up kind of in a different shape than you normally would keep them. When you do the exercise, you want to keep your hand in the correct position. The reason is because as these spirals start happening through the tissue as it loosens, if I let the spiral as it gets out into my wrist and hand turn my hand, I end up not getting the next set of spirals, which reverse back and go up in through my fingers. Because I basically, what would create and generate that spiral is just getting used up turning my hand. It's kind of the same type of thing that in Tai Chi you have the same kind of phenomena, where if I'm turning my waist and I'm opening my body and I do it, and the twisting and the spiraling in my legs gets to my knees, and then it turns my knees, it doesn't go down into my lower legs. So you have the same type of thing here. So when you do this, you want to make sure you really keep your hand position, because then what happens is, as these actually do start rotating on their own more, the rotation, the twists translate and go all the way through your fingers, rather than kind of just stopping in the heavy tissue.
So the hand facing, that way of holding your hand is extremely important. in
Mhm.
this.
And I think the biggest problem is collapsing the hand instead of keeping beautiful lady's hand, or just keeping the structure of the hand.
So one of the things I'm not doing is this. If you look at my elbow and my wrist, I'm not doing this rotation where you cross over the bones. They're staying in the same relationship.
Twist coming out.
So the hand isn't going
Or at your shoulders, actually.
moving around. Put your hand up.
The twisting then goes
Put your hand up.
through the tissue rather than turning the bones. So that's what you're trying to really kind of work towards.
So Fair Lady's hand.
So
Yeah,
fair
I mean,
lady's hand.
Yeah.
Fair lady's hand.
Fair Lady's.
Fair lady.
She's
Come on, it's okay, Stan.
she's fair. Whether she's a lady is a question, you know. So.
But remember, as you do this, your attention is not on trying to make the twisting happen. Your attention is on the closing and the gathering.
You use that idea of like a fixed point with a rubber band. If the fixed point is wobbling around, it's hard to keep the stretch going with the rubber band.
Yeah, and this is also like if you're turning something and you're trying to make it twist, if you turn it and the other thing turns with it, it doesn't twist.
Yeah, there's no tension.
Oh.
It has to kind of stay in neutral, so more or less.
Yeah, you're trying to keep your skeletal structure stable and have all the motion really translate into the joints and into the tissue. Now what I want to do is I want to do basically the same thing we're doing, but I want you to do it with the legs.
With what?
Your legs.
Oh, okay.
The legs.
Legs.
You mean rotating
Yeah,
The eggs?
because this is, like, there's a couple kind of
It's an umbilical class.
precautions here, like in Ron's case where you have problems with your knees.
Right.
You know, it's not that it's important that it's big, and so the people doing it just do it really gently. But you're just trying to help stimulate. You're not trying to do this. You don't want to like twist it to see when it twists my knees. You don't want to do that. All you want to try to do, and like if, actually why don't you come up here, Ron, so you'd be a good kind of person to show this with. And you can go ahead and just go into doing the exercise. Okay. And what I'm going to do is, like with his upper arms, and I'll probably have to just sit here to do this because it'll be easier. But I'm just going to take his thigh, but I'm not really going to try to twist it that much. It's like my hand, my touch is very light right now. And I'm just going to very lightly get it to rotate a little bit more.
So tell us, are you going in and out in one?
Yes, I'm going in,
On the upper
Out.
arm.
Out.
Just like their arm.
In.
Out. You see, in his case, because he has, some knee problems, I'm gonna be really careful to make sure I don't do anything that twists his knee.
You probably could do a little bit more than quite frankly.
And generally speaking, with the thighs, because the tissue's bigger and heavier, you probably have to use a little more strength than you would in the arms.
You can see the muscle moving.
Mhm. What's really interesting, if you came back here and felt his calf for a minute.
It moves too.
Yeah, good. And just go ahead and put your hand there for a minute. And go ahead, Ron's doing the exercise, and I'm not doing anything. Okay? Now I'm going to start doing the twist.
Yes.
If you keep the skeletal structure stable, it'll translate down
Yeah,
into the calf.
yeah.
You're doing the opposite,
Yeah.
where the forearm.
Yeah.
goes
Well, he's not even trying to do it. It's doing it on its own.
Right.
But it'll actually translate and transfer down as long as you keep the alignment stable. Okay?
But not, really keeping those knees, the knees themselves,
Right.
right over the.
Right. So we keep your knees very stable all the way. So what I want to do now is I want to explain the basic thing that you do in the third exercise without going into a lot of detail with it. And then I want to have us go and do the first one, the second one, and go into the third one. And actually do them in sequence. But in the third exercise, so now you've gotten, from the second one, you've gotten the chi nicely gathered as much as you do. And I'm gathering, I expand. And again, you want to try to have kind of a seamless transition here. So I go back into the gathering, and when I get gathered in at the bottom, then I reverse and I actually open downwards into the ground. Now, as I lift, I want to really have a sense up the right and left channels energetically opening up. And what I mean by the right and left channels, I mean, a lot of you know what I'm talking about, but as a quick review, if I go from deep inside my shoulders, not kind of on the surface, but really down and deep, right down into my hips, into my knees, into the center of my feet, basically energetically there's a channel there, and ultimately it's a channel that actually functions right around the bones. So it's very deep actually in. But for now, getting those alignments is very important. This is the main reason why when we do these, we work on this certain alignment, the legs and the hips, is because it brings these things into alignment. It's a lot easier to move the energy up and down through the side channels if they're lined up. You can do it when they're like this, but it's a lot harder. So this is to make your life easier rather than more difficult. So as I finish the second one, I then sink into the ground. As I lift, I want to have the sensation internally bringing energy up the right and left channels. And when it gets to my shoulders, I need to make sure I bring my elbows in so my elbows and forearms line up on the channels. So then the energy gets all the way up through the fingertips, up the right and left channels. At the top, when it reaches up through the fingertips, you have to internally adjust so that if you extend up from your top of your head, your back way, upwards, the energy of the fingertips and the energy on the flyway connect. Okay, so that's going up. Now you're going to come down. Come down with your awareness coming down through your center, through your central channel. Through your perineum, down into the ground, out to the feet, up side channels, connect on top, down central, down your center. Into the ground, out to the feet, up the side channels. Down the central channel. To the ground, out to the feet, up the side channels, connect above.
I'm curious about the verbiage, out to the feet.
Yeah, because when you go down, you really go down through your zongding straight
Okay.
into the ground, like
All right.
a thread,
Uh-huh.
and then go out onto the feet,
I see.
rather than coming down and splitting it.
I see.
'Cause- and maybe later on I'll have time to kind of explain why you're doing that
Uh-huh.
differently. But for now, try to
Okay.
do that, okay?
So it's going up 2 channels but coming down the
One.
same thing.
That's right.
Why? Don't know why.
Why not?
It's just, it's cleaning all the channels.
Yeah.
You're cleaning first the outsides and
But I
then
mean,
the
it could
inside.
go up to something and down the 2 channels.
Yeah, but you wouldn't do the arm positioning that way.
I see.
And be different exercise.
So it has to do with the arms.
Well, it has to do with the arms, but it also has to do with the circulation you're trying to induce internally. It's not that you couldn't do it, there's actually exercises that do just the opposite. But in terms of what you're trying to get at this point, this is more productive.
And however, when you come up through the feet, come up through bubbling well?
If you can,
Or bubbling
if you can
spinach?
differentiate that, yes.
Yeah.
The other very, very, very important aspect of this exercise is unifying the sinking through the zongding with the energy in your spine. Okay.
How is he
So good question. How do you do this? Because, well, simple sense. If I get a good extension in my spine up through my occiput, up through my neck, I can get the energy to get up to the top of the head. So the energy in your spine can connect up at the back way. That's the first connection of it. Second connection is you follow your spine all the way down into your remnant of apedom.
Coccyx?
Your tail.
Oh, unless you're someone who believes in
Right.
Divine intervention.
divine intervention, or what do they call it now?
No,
What do they call it now?
Intelligent design.
Intelligent design.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a coccyx is not part of intelligent design.
It's not intelligent.
It's not.
It's we have that.
It's something.
It's an ill-conceived bow.
Yeah. It's like conceived. But at that end of your spine, your coccyx needs to come on into alignment onto the zongding. So then what happens is the top and the bottom of the spine are connected energetically to the zongding. Now, how do you do this? Side view. Always easier to see. Yeah, you will have a hard time seeing it from that angle.
Spacing out.
Can you see?
Okay, I'm gonna go up and left and right channels. Nice and tight on top. Okay, at this point, unlike Tai Chi, I don't really have my pelvis tucked forward. It's a little bit, I have it enough so I don't have any tension in my lower back, but I don't really have it really pulled under. That's gonna start happening as I start going down this zongding. So at the very top, I've got to make sure my connection with my fingertips from the side channels goes up. The connection from the Bai Hui through the zongding goes up, and I'm open through my neck so that the energy in my spine gets up to my Bai Hui. hence all three are hooked up. Now as I start coming down the Zongding, my spine, through my pelvis rolling, is going to start bowing. And the bow is going to come until, by the time the energy gets to the lower part of my Zongding, now the bow is such that the energy on the coccyx is now connected into the Zongding. Then as I come up the sides.
I've always thought of this one as bend, bow, shoot, tiger.
Not quite. It's similar, but it's not quite the same because it's not, in terms of the circulation that takes place, it's different.
Okay.
The articulation of the spine is pretty similar.
I thought if it's bend the bow, shoot the arrow.
Mm-hmm.
Shoot it whatever you want.
Shoot a tiger,
Shoot an
shoot
arrow.
Leslie.
Well, I thought you are the bow
Shoot
and
the arrow.
arrow.
It's very good, you are.
You are the bow and arrow.
Where's the center of
And the top.
the bow?
Of course.
Most of the time you would do it probably more or less in the center of your back. Again, because these exercises are not kind of martial, if I was doing it for Tai Chi and doing bend the bow and shoot the arrow in Tai Chi, then you're doing it specifically usually from the Ming Man.
Right.
Or you do it slightly higher where the upper waist, where the trapezius and the psoas connects to your spine, which is slightly higher. But for this, you can really do it at any point you want. As I come down, I want to start out having the energy of my spine connected up to my bioblade, my fingertips connected up to the Zongding, and the energy of the Zongding connected up. So really all three are now joined. And as I start coming down the Zongding, I want to start rolling my spine. So at the bottom, at the point I get down here, or I can do it, if I can get there sooner, it's fine too. But at some point, I want to make sure I get to where my pelvis has rolled and my coccyx has rolled forward enough that my coccyx now lines up onto my Zongding. Then I bring the energy back out to the feet, up the right and left channels, connect above.
Are the Zongding and the coccyx then disconnected when you go up? Or not, you just don't care that they did?
If you can actually keep them connected if you're kind of really astute about it. But it doesn't matter that much because you're not really trying to pull the energy up the Zongding.
It's more here.
You're pulling the energy
channels.
up the right and left channels.
So you just don't think about it?
So you just don't think about it.
Okay.
And just let it relax.
I interrupt your...
No, I basically got that. That was the explanation. Okay? So I want to have you do a little exercise now. Because it's hard to kind of get a really good sense of when do you get the energy down through the coccyx and really get it connected. And what I have found is the most helpful way of doing this is if someone comes here, like, and yeah, why don't you do it, Bill, because I know you can do it. Okay, Bill's going to go ahead and start doing the exercise. And now you see, stop. Now, watch what's happened here. See how his upper body has opened and bent more proportionally than his lower body? What I have to do is bring the lower into balance with the upper. Now, the thing that's really telling of this is now if you look at him from the side, the crescent that's formed by his spine and body is very even and it's very smooth. The other thing that's really telling is if I look from the top of his head and I were to drop a line, it's going to go right down through. It's going to go right down through his torso. It's going to come down through the pelvis, through where his perineum is, and it's going to drop down into his foot. The way he was before, where does that line go? goes out over there. So it's balancing the spine so that this curvature, this crescent that's formed, becomes very even. Another way to kind of think of this internally is it's sort of like trying to, probably make a crude joke.
Go ahead, if you're friends.
Well, you know, I was just gonna say, it's like what the cat does when it cleans itself, you know? Okay, so now go ahead and go. If you go deeper,
That's about as deep as I
yeah,
can
you
get.
have to go deeper here. It's down here that you have to keep going. You can't just kind of stop your lower body and then
So
bend your upper.
how much should we really use muscles to do that, rather than just sort of not use muscles?
That sort of depends on your looseness, but don't force it too
Don't
hard.
force it,
No.
just think curve and.
Yeah, try to get it to curve and make it comfortable. And that might mean you only go to here. You know, you go to here. Maybe that's it. But if that's where your body is, that's what you do. It's not like you're trying to get to this ultimate.
Yoga.
Well, I mean, in some ways it is, but
Well, and a lot of the problem would be up in the neck, getting,
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
neck is so much more flexible than other parts of the spine.
So try to do this with each other. Do it, and then have it. You know, really just look at the person and just go, okay. Like if Bill did it again, it gets like too far here. Hey, you stop and you just look at like, hey, I don't go from his head top and I go down through the center of his body. Where's that line going? Well, right now it's kicking out a foot out, it's backwards. So that means this has to come up a little bit and balance. Maybe this has to go under a little more. What I was going to do is just see if anybody had any more questions up to this point. Just to-
Robert, you had
Uh-huh.
said something at the beginning about how we're going from the outside and going in deeper on each exercise through
Mhm.
this. Is that
Mhm.
right? Okay. So now we're kind of around the middle.
And actually, we're kind of around the middle, and we're going to be around the middle for the next couple exercises because it's not really until the last one that goes much deeper. Because what you're doing now, in a sense, is hooking up a bunch of other things, and you're kind of doing it. You might go a little deeper as you do it. You probably will, but it's not like you get this really big jump all of a sudden until the end. And so what we did in the last exercise is we hooked up really 3 things. They're very important things to hook up. We hooked up the Zong Ding, the right and left channels, and the spine. And to give you an overview from it. Ultimate goal here is to get the energy completely running up and down the Zong Ding. That's it. It's just gonna go in and in and in until it gets there. Ideal. Or however refined that gets, it gets there. That's really the last exercise. One of the things that are the components that add into that, because the components of the whole system have to get reflected in the core of the system. Well, they're the right and left channels. They're the spine. They're the energy that really comes from the pumping of the joints in the spine, which if we've done that somewhat in some classes, and ultimately I'm going to have to I'll probably will do a separate weekend on that, because you can kind of do these in different orders. And if I'm doing the second exercise, that's what that was really working on. Is starting to get this kind of internal pumping that goes through the joints. Now why is this is so important is because when you get to where the Zong Ding really gets open, it's at the point where the energy gets fully into the joints and it travels through the bones. Because in a sense, the Zong Ding isn't just the central axis, it's the core of all the bones of your body. That's why all of these components have to be worked to loosen up everything and get everything working, so eventually the chi flows deeper and deeper and deeper until it eventually gets into the joints, and then it gets on the surface of the bones, and then it gets into the hard part of the bones, and then it gets into the bone marrow. When you get into the bone marrow, that's really where it's really fully there. But all these other things contribute, and preliminarily, all these exercises are designed to be slowly getting your body more and more increasingly opened up so that you can get that energy to run deeper and deeper in your system. Okay? So did that give you a little bit of an answer?
More opened up and more balanced.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of it is if it's not balanced, it's not really open. And if it's imbalanced, if it's like not flowing in a balanced way, there's some part of it that's closed in. And so balancing it brings it, starts getting it to open up. The other thing is he's trying to get it to open up uniformly. Because again, if it's unbalanced, and let's say I can really get this side of me open, that's not actually that good of a thing if I'm not really equally as open on the other side. So the balancing is very important in terms of getting it all to work in a unified way. So now, Cloud Hands. Cloud Hands has, in essence, two very important components. No, I take that back. 3. I have trouble counting. That's why I left physics. So. 1 atom, 2 atom, 5 atoms. Again, Cloud Hands, if you look at the alignments in it, and I'm going to do the simple one because it's going to help see this. There's an alignment on the right and left channel that's going on. And we're not going to probably work too much on that because it works more in the other exercise. But it's good to see that it's there. There's also an energetic connection going from the opposite leg to the opposite hand. That's the thing that Cloud Hand works that none of the other exercises in the set work. So that's the big one. The third one is what it does with your organs. And if you watch at my arm position here, and that's why, you know, that when we were playing around earlier today in the other Qigong class, about doing the other version where you roll the ball, that works the organs more, but it doesn't work the cross body as much. And some other one's better or worse, they're just slightly different emphasis. The thing that's critical to getting the organs to start moving around a lot in this exercise is what you do with this elbow. That it has to sink and relax, and so as I'm opening, this goes under, which creates an internal pull across my abdomen. So now I get this stretching and releasing going on through that abdominal cavity. If I keep my elbow out like this, I don't get it. You have to, and if I stick it out too much, if I stretch too much like through my shoulder, if I try to go, oh, this feels good. You get almost no abdominal work. You really have to keep your shoulders relaxed. You really have to pump through the quad and through your waist, and turn and drop this elbow in. Let it sink. Even that difference, that versus that is very big in terms of how much stretching you get internally. So why don't we stand up and work on that a little bit, try to see if you can get a little feeling. What we'll do is just, I want you to just go into doing Cloud Hands. And as you pump open and open your waist, really think about, okay, I really need to relax this elbow. It really needs to sink. And it needs to sink down, and as it goes down, it actually starts coming in slightly. And as you do that, it also lengthens your shoulder out a little bit, around laterally. You look at the angle of my hand here. See how it's really much more up than it is out. Drop the elbow. let it, someone, why don't you come over here and look at this? Come on up for a second. If I do this, my elbow's out, I can still open my shoulders and get my shoulders open like this, but this doesn't have much effect in my abdomen. If I drop the elbow, then if I drop it into my body, then it's no good because my shoulder collapses. So it still needs to, the elbow needs to lengthen out from the spine, and then at the same time, drop inwards. And as you do that, it creates a twist that goes into your belly. And as you go through, if you have that connection, then as you go through the exercise and the movement of the exercise, it kind of does a ringing action through your abdomen. Which helps.
Through your shoulders too? Through your back, your shoulders a little too?
No.
Okay.
No, if you're getting it, if it's happening through your back and shoulders, you're twisting yourself.
Oh.
And if you twist yourself, the twist, it's like with the knees. If you twist the back doing this, the twist won't go into your abdomen. It'll go into your back. So it has to translate through that skeletal structure. This is the hardest thing to get of all these exercises. No, it's good to massage the organs for several reasons. One is, in terms of Chinese medicine, all the organs are connected internally into a whole matrix of the qi, of the energy. And basically that's, even when you go to an acupuncturist, one of the things they're doing is basically balancing the qi vis-a-vis the organs. So in that sense it's very important because what it does is it gets the energy in each one of the organs kind of freed up. In the same way that if you're doing like the second exercise, you're drawing everything in, you start getting this kind of like pumping into a joint. Well, this starts helping you get that palpitation going, which occurs naturally through each one of the organs. And it makes the organs a lot healthier. From a martial arts standpoint, if you learn how to really do it, you can hit someone with your liver. As I'm doing this, if you want to just get a sense of this a little bit, then you can go like grab on my leg or my forearm or something for a second. But as I do it, although I'm going through these motions, my tissue and my bone structure are not doing exactly the same thing. The tissue is twisting around my bones. See how my leg alignments are being very stable. So then as I close and turn, open and turn, the combination of the compression and the turning creates these little spiraling twists that run down through your legs and come up through your arms. And the more relaxed you are, the deeper and deeper they go. Because it's not so much about how big I necessarily make the spirals, it's how deep they travel. Is the real thing. And if you get too obsessed with trying to make like a big twisting action in your tissue, that's probably what you'll mostly get, is a big twisting action in your tissue. You want to really relax the tissue, allow it, and so the energy can just kind of sink in, gradually get a little bit deeper. So how's this feel? Okay. Now what I want to have you do is come back, and I want you to do, again, this is an interesting little exercise to do, because even if you don't do any martial arts or anything, this is a very interesting thing, because if you do this, if I go here, and let's say I want to do this, and I go into this motion, all I want you to do is keep doing the exact same thing you're doing, but then like if Bill holds onto my arm, first thing this idea is, I don't have to do that. All I have to do is do the same thing internally I've been doing. The interesting thing about that, I'm sort of exaggerating a little bit, but if you just really concentrate on doing the internal part of that, it will actually just kind of carry the person with it.
Yeah, the spiral.
I don't know if I
lower
would do
body,
it
is
right though, you know, I mean, clown
You
hands,
know,
I
the
think I do.
crossbody thing, is this one doing the opposite of this, or?
This is an interesting question. So Jay is wondering, in the crossbody, the twisting action, what's happening is like between this leg and this arm. Right?
Yeah.
As I go here, as I'm opening, this isn't going in. This is twisting out during the open. So this leg is twisting out as I go. This arm
It's twisting out.
is twisting in.
This one's twisting